An epic clash at Stamford Bridge between Chelsea and Manchester City formed the basis of our discussion today. The game between these two great English teams was one of the best games this season, actually one of the contenders of the best game of the season. So the game ended in a 4-4 dramatic draw. The draw itself aroused a lot of emotions, and for the neutrals, this was such a great game that they enjoyed. But for both teams, this was a very emotional, intense game. So Pochettino and Pep Guardiola faced again, and these two managers have had dramatic games in the past. So this one was not quite a surprise, as both managers showcased their tactical flexibility and their ability to counter each other. The great thing about this game is that Chelsea did not sit deep, and this was the lineup that Chelsea lined up with. Chelsea went to their default 4-2-3-1 system, with Cucurella coming in for Levi Colwill, while the entire starting lineup remains unchanged, like the game in which they played against Tottenham Hotspur. On the other hand, Manchester City also went with a 4-1-4-1 formation, with Jeremy Doku and Phil Foden holding the width, Vardiol coming in to play at left back, and Akanji replacing the injured John Stones, with Rodri playing as a single pivot in the initial phases of the game. And we're going to see how this panned out. So most neutrals in this game really enjoyed, but the tactical flexibility employed by both Pochettino and Pep Guardiola was quite interesting. And this will form the basis of our discussion today. Most people expected Chelsea to come and sit deep against Manchester City, but Chelsea decided to take the game to Manchester City, pressing them and dominating phases of play. From the possession stats on the screen, you can clearly see that Chelsea and Manchester City were quite even, with Chelsea having 45% of the ball, Manchester City 55%, and looking at the shots on target, the only difference was that Manchester City had one more, showcasing that Chelsea also had opportunities against Manchester City. Before we begin our analysis, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. So what did Manchester City do? How did Pep Guardiola line up his team? We're going to see how Manchester City lined up in possession, out of possession, and how they lined up while pressing Chelsea. And we're going to see some of the problems that they encountered that they faced against Manchester United. So in the initial phases of play, Chelsea were quite proactive. They went toe-to-toe by pressing Manchester City high up the pitch. So a lot of people did not expect that Chelsea are going to go after the ball aggressively like they went for the ball in the first half. And this sometimes resulted in Chelsea winning the ball, but in some instances, Ederson will play an easy ball over the top. This aggressive press, you've seen that in some instances, it resulted in Chelsea winning the ball. And Chelsea were very quite intelligent once they won the ball. And this is a shift from what we saw Chelsea do last season. And that is immediately launch quick transition. So whenever Chelsea won the ball through the high press, they immediately went after Manchester City, attempting to score the goal against Manchester City. So let's move to our tactical board. We know Manchester City like to start their wingers so wide and push two of their players behind the opposition midfield. Their main aim is usually to use Ederson as an extra centre back. And when Chelsea were pressing high, Ederson tried to play these long balls behind the line, and in some instances, Cucurella found himself 1v1 against Phil Foden, until Pochettino decided that he should sit Chelsea in a mid 4-4-2 block. So in this block, what we saw is that Conor Gallagher started to sit on Rodri, while Jackson started to sit on Akanji. But we're going to see the problem with this Manchester City build-up strategy, because Manchester City started to deploy that wide back three, with only Diaz playing as the playmaker, almost building up with one centre back. So this wide back three system that Manchester City employed is something that Manchester United exploited. in the Manchester derby. But the problem is Manchester United were not quite effective in winning these balls in midfield and immediately running into the space generated by the wide Manchester City centre-backs. But on the other hand, Chelsea were quite proficient in doing this. So you can see here, Gallagher is now stepping out to press Diaz. Jackson is picking Akanji, and Cole Palmer has tucked inside and is covering the runs of Bernardo Silva, who's dropping deep to try to receive the ball directly from the goalkeeper. So Gallagher is putting pressure on Diaz. So Diaz will now be forced to play the ball back to Ederson. And now Jackson can come back and try to cover. And Chelsea can now force Manchester City to play the ball towards the wide centre-back. So once the ball is played towards the wide centre-backs, in the instance whereby Manchester City would play the ball to Doku, Reece James was quite fast in dealing with Doku. And majority of the time of the game, Reece James won the battle. So Bernardo Silva started to drop deep, pulling out Moises Caicedo out of position and dragging him out of play. And Haaland dropping deep, they will link up with Bernardo Silva, who will now try to create a 2v1 against Reece James. And during the first half, we saw Manchester City trying to exploit this 2v1 against Reece James, with Bernardo Silva making the run into the half spaces. On the left-hand side, Sterling was quite proactive against Walker. And we saw now Manchester City with Julian Alvarez trying to put Phil Foden 1v1 against Cucurella. But Cucurella was quite effective. So Chelsea would win the ball and immediately launch quick counter-attacks in the spaces between the three centre-backs. Raheem Sterling in particular was quite efficient in making these exploits. Now let's see when Manchester City were now in a more settled phase of possession. You can see here, Chelsea employing their mid 4-4-2 block. The two forwards are playing quite narrow, tying up Rodri and Akanji, while Bernardo Silva and Alvarez are being picked up by Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. Now Manchester City could not play through this mid block that Chelsea had created because Chelsea had denied Manchester City central progression. So Jackson was not quite as efficient in pressing as Gallagher, and when he springed out, Diaz would find the pass into Akanji, who will spring the ball now onto Jeremy Doku. So Doku in some instance had success against Chelsea, and this is where we saw Bernardo Silva making this half space run and attempting a cross, and this is what actually resulted in the first penalty goal. Haaland will be drifting out wide so that he can play towards the far post so that he can beat Marc Cucurella on because he's taller than him. Now, another thing that we saw Manchester City employing in their wide build-up shape is that once Pep Guardiola saw that this wide build-up shape that Manchester City were building up with the Ruben Diaz playing as a single centre-back, and Conor Gallagher always having time and space to press him and win the ball off him, this prompted Pep Guardiola to shift by moving his centre-backs nearer to Ruben Diaz. So now the problem that this created is that now, if Manchester City played the ball in midfield and Chelsea would win the ball, Raheem Sterling will be in acres of space to receive the ball and immediately run at Manchester City's backline. So Pep Guardiola in his post-match analysis applauded Chelsea and showed how Chelsea were quite great in dealing with the likes of Arsenal and Liverpool, and his team also suffered a lot against Chelsea. So in our next segment, we are going to look what made Chelsea so strong in this game. Why did Chelsea cause an upset for Manchester City in this game? We're going to see how key players, key figures, and key tactical setups by Pochettino gave problems to Manchester City. If you've stayed with us till now, can you please subscribe and share this video? So, Chelsea's initial build-up play was either to go long to find Jackson and immediately win the second balls and immediately launch quick transitions. So what we used to see Chelsea doing during build-up is that the two centre-backs will either spread wide and Cucurella will be pushing so high and wide to play almost as a left winger. And this will see Enzo Fernandez drop in a pseudo left-back position. Enzo dropping as the auxiliary left back gave him time and space to orchestrate Chelsea's build-up more. He will handle the ball much better at left back than Marc Cucurella. So this now forced Bernardo Silva to shift out to try to come and press Enzo. And Enzo, being an excellent passer of the ball and the dropping in Conor Gallagher, enabled Chelsea time and time again to break Manchester City's high press. And I was very impressed with how Chelsea built up throughout this game, since they were able to easily penetrate Manchester City's midfield. It is so hard beating Manchester City. The play, Now, another key thing that we saw Chelsea employ is using Thiago Silva as a pivot. So what used to happen is that Thiago Silva will be pushing in midfield to play as a pivot, while Cucurella will start out wide as a wide left-sided centre-back. So Manchester City were confused how they were going to press this Chelsea build-up strategy. And I think Pochettino derived this from Manchester United. So in this case, if Foden went on to try to press Cucurella, then now Sterling will be free to drop deep and receive the ball directly from Cucurella, since Chelsea were overloading Manchester City with as many as 5 players in midfield, since also Cole Palmer will be dropping deep. The position of Enzo and Caicedo just ahead of Thiago Silva in this build-up always ensured that Chelsea had an extra player in midfield. And this enabled Rodri now was chasing ghosts throughout the game. Down the right-hand side, Chelsea were quite interesting, since Caicedo will be playing the ball towards this position, Gallagher will shift to the right-wing position, and now we will see Cole Palmer thriving, coming short, receiving the ball in space, and enabling Chelsea to progress with the ball from their defensive third to their attacking third. And shout out to Cole Palmer, because Cole Palmer was quite effective in this kind of strategy. His ability to pick these spaces was quite interesting, and his ability to link up with Reece James. And Reece James almost played as a winger throughout the match. Now, in most settled phases of possession, in the first half, Manchester City were pressing Chelsea in a 4-1-4-1 system. Therefore, the two Chelsea centre-backs Pochettino deployed, Disasi and Thiago Silva, will have ample time and space to just play the ball amongst them, between themselves, and also pick the right passes. And this was really stopped pressuring Manchester City. At times when Cucurella would drop deep from a back three, Manchester City will now have joy, since now they will push Foden and Jeremy Doku on both centre backs, with Bernardo Silva and Alvarez picking both Enzo and Moises Caicedo. So Chelsea sometimes employed this wide centre-back system, stretching Manchester City's pressing so wide and creating gaping holes in between the lines for the dropping in Cole Palmer and Raheem Sterling. So what this wide back three system showcased was that Chelsea had problems, and when Chelsea decided to shift into a back two build-up system with two centre backs, what happened now is that Cole Palmer would be able to drop deep, receive the ball, and immediately slip the ball for Reece James. This is what we saw in the second goal that was scored by Raheem. In more attacking systems and phases of play, Reece James almost played as a right winger, and when Manchester City decided to go man-to-man with Chelsea centre backs, what we saw is the position again. Cole Palmer was quite instrumental, as well as Raheem Sterling, and Pep Guardiola detailed this in his post-match. This game was quite interesting and quite remarkable, and it showcased the process in which Chelsea are going through and how effective Mauricio Pochettino is molding one of the most youngest and most exciting prospects to Chelsea. The return of Christopher Nkunku and Romeo Lavia in this lineup will be an addition of great depth in the team and a lot of goals, especially from Christopher Nkunku. This game at Stamford Bridge will be quite memorial, and Pep Guardiola said it perfectly that it was a fair game. Manchester City scored 4 goals and did not win the game. First thing, it's a new thing in Pep Guardiola's managerial history. the other hand, Mauricio Pochettino will take this win, this draw, and use it as a motivation to his players that even at times when Chelsea face teams that sit in deeper blocks and go 1-0 up, Chelsea will have the belief of coming back against this team. This was an incredible performance from Chelsea, and if you've stayed with us till the end of the video, thanks for watching. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.